Good evening, folks. How are you doing? I'm Bill Sylvie, and you're not. How the heck are you? It's good to see everybody. I, of course, am your host, the Dungeon Delver. And like we do on Wednesdays, I have my lovely host, Mr. the Viking Hat GM, Kyle Schuant. Kyle, how the heck are you, brother?
Oh, I'm not too bad. It's a wee bit chilly down here in the Melbourne winter in my garage. I probably should have dragged the laptop inside just this once, but I'm sitting here with my coffee and my old-fashioned bar heater, the electric bar heater, with the oil circulating around inside. So I shouldn't freeze to death. I should be all right.
Excellent, excellent. I have exactly the opposite problem. I have a cold tumbler of ice water and an electric fan to keep me cool. So it's like bizarro world setups, you know. But anyway, how are you, man? How are you doing?
Good. No gaming to report this week. Just the usual computer game stuff. But no in-person gaming yet, alas. We're still waiting on the game stores to reopen. There's a few around in the outer suburbs that have survived as just like warehouse stores. But yeah, people don't go there and game.
I mean, you could. It would just be kind of awkward, just, sit down in an aisle. And every so often somebody gets up and gets a bottle of water or a pack of gum and checks out and comes back and sits down. It's like, I'm shocked. Well, what are you going to do?
Well, I've gamed in worse places, but mostly it's just you wouldn't have that walk-through traffic that you have in a retail store, which is really good for an open game table. Lets you just bring people in, which I've always enjoyed, where just people of all ages, shapes, and sizes just wander up and go, because they, even if nobody's played, even if their only experience is 5e or something, they haven't really played D&D. They know the books. They probably wouldn't recognize like a wood grain set or something, but they know AD&D First Edition. They recognize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cultural touchstone, and that you look at, and you don't even have to go to nostalgic stuff like Stranger Things or Freaks and Geeks or the Goldbergs or anything like that. But was an episode of Community, very famous. I don't know if you've seen it. The show, if you guys, if anyone hasn't seen it, is a zany kind of surreal comedy about a group of young to late adults who've kind of washed out in the quote-unquote regular world, so they all attend a community college together, and they get wrapped up playing a D&D game one weekend. And it is set in contemporary times. It's not like, oh, this is set in the 90s or 80s or 70s or whatever. But when they get together to play, I mean, the episode is called Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And all the books that you see on screen, like there's a character played by Chevy Chase who decides he plays a rich asshole, which was such a stretch for Chevy Chase. God bless him. Such a reach, such a stretching of his talents. But anyway, Pierce is his character's name, and he decides he must win Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, not really understanding it's a cooperative thing. So he buys a set. He buys somebody's D&D stuff to get a copy of the adventure. And point of trivia, the milk crate full of D&D books is all first edition AD&D books that he's going through. They all belong to the show's producer, Dan Harmon. So the one real good look you get at D&D books in the episode, they are Advanced Dungeons and Dragons books. They're not the then prominent 4th edition books, although one of those is on the table. I guess Wizards of the Coast must have insisted on it.
Yeah, but, Like, I remember thinking years ago that you'll hear of some famous album that's sold, you know, this many copies, but essentially everyone has heard the songs on it.
Yeah.
And, you know, because it goes on radio and so on. And likewise, you know, a movie sold this many tickets in the theater and it hasn't been on TV since, but everyone's seen it somehow. You know, there are some sort of things that are just kind of, as you said, cultural touchstones, that even if people can't remember when and where they first heard that song or played that game or whatever, they know about it. And yeah, AD&D is one of those.
Yeah, I mean, there was a joke once on an episode of SNL. Mike Myers doing his Wayne's World bit, and they were talking about, like, I don't know, they're making just like a quick list of, like, you know, overplayed albums or top albums or something like that. And one on the list was Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. And he made the comments. He's like, hello, if you lived in the suburbs in the 1980s, this was standard issue. You were given a copy of this when you moved to the suburbs as a teenager in the 1980s.
Well, and there's also that bit in the movie where they go to the music store and he sits down with an electric guitar, and the clerk points to the sign and it says, "No stairway to heaven." No stairway to heaven. Yeah. Yeah, they're just, everybody knows those things, and they're eternal. You know, you think of Superman, you don't think of one of the hojillion variants of Superman's costume that the different artists have tried to push on us. With all respect to the people who've tried to hold various Marvel superheroes hostage, even little kids today, Spider-Man is Peter Parker. He's not Miles Morales. All right. That's just how it is. Well, just this morning, walking the kids to school, my son was asking, so when Peter Parker he said, I know in the later versions, that's not how he got his powers, bitten by a radioactive spider. And I'm like, isn't it? He's obviously picked it up from somewhere or other, because he doesn't have like a whole pile of the comics or something. Anyway, he says, I know in the later versions that's not how he got the powers, but if he was bitten by a radioactive spider and that's how he got the powers, how come he didn't get the power to shoot webs out of his bum or something? He said.
So
he said, how come he had to make the thing, and you know, that's why he does the pressing the pad, and how come he had to make that, he said. So even this 10-year-old kid who's, you know, born about 100 years after the stories first started, he knows the basics that the guy with, and he doesn't have a single Spider-Man comic. He's seen a few of the comics, a few of the cartoons on TV. I showed him the 1970s ones. You know, where he leaves the card, you know, with the tied up criminal. A gift from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. From your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, absolutely. So he's seen those. He hasn't seen any of the movies, but he still knows Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider, and that's how he got his powers. He just, you know, wonders, but why did he get this power but not that power? So we get a little bit of Venn diagram crossover with the little man's question and D&D. There's a very, very funny animated show that ran for a really long time on Cartoon Network on their Adult Swim lineup called The Venture Brothers. And The Venture Brothers is a send-up of Johnny Quest. And it is a spoof of all of the secret agents and G.I. Joe and comic book and science fiction tropes in animation from the 70s and early 1980s. And it really, really is well done. There's an episode where they're flashing back to Dr. Venture and how he gained an enemy. There's a supervillain who's trapped him somewhere, and they're trying to figure out why
like trying to psychologically unlock why this guy did this. And so they're flashing back to the dorm room, and Dr. Venture himself is a pretty terrible person on a personal level. He's an asshole, and he deserves most of the bad things that happen to him on the show. Well, as it happens, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. They never say Dungeons and Dragons. They never linger on rules or anything like that. But on the floor in front of the DM, there's very obviously easy to identify a Dungeon Master's screen. Like, you know, a cartoonist would sit down and say, so D&D in the 1970s or in the 1980s, the Dungeon Master would have had a Dungeon Master screen. What did that look like? Okay, that's going to be on screen for like 4 seconds before we cut away. So, you know, I can just kind of do an impression of it. In that same show, because again, this is a spoof of superheroes and secret agents and so on, that were all in the vein of Johnny Quest. There is a superhero called the Brown Recluse, who's essentially Spider-Man, and he does have web spinning powers that are entirely organic, that activate in a very inopportune moment every now and again. So there you go. There's your Papa Dungeons and Dragons crossover.
Yeah, so these cultural things seep into people's brains somehow or other from somewhere in society. And the more geeky side of the population dwells on it and and thinks about the details. So I'm trying to ensure that my son doesn't grow up to be the comic book store guy who's arguing over, you know, the different editions and the different versions of the different superheroes.
But Aquaman, you cannot marry a surface dweller. How would she breathe in your watery home? You know, you don't want to be that guy.
Oh no, they go much further into that. I mean, it's like the I first heard of such people because I was a bit oblivious when I was a young gamer. I first heard of such people when I heard that Star Trek: The Next Generation had people on staff who were dedicated to keeping the Star Trek pseudoscience internally consistent. That if a phaser did this on episode 6, then a phaser would be able to do that on episode 206 or whatever. They were dead because there were guys who'd write in and say, but actually. So yeah, that's where I first heard of such people, and I'm trying to ensure my son grow up to be such a person. So, but yeah, there is gaming news. He started gaming at his school.
Excellent! Excellent! He's playing later, I'm presuming.
No, he's playing. It must be at least 3.5 or something. Like I asked him which edition, and he said he doesn't know. So I mean, that's like kids don't care. But he said he was a rogue Dragonborn or something. I don't know. He probably just likes Dragonborn because he's played Skyrim. But yeah, so it must be at least 3.5. But whatever. He's sitting down with the teacher on Friday lunchtimes and a couple of his friends, and he said, "Oh, we had to start easy because my two friends, they haven't played D&D before like I have." He says. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then the high school that he's likely to go to, he enthusiastically told me, "Oh, they have a D&D club."
That's awesome, man. That is great.
So I don't know the details of what year it starts or whatever, but yeah. Yeah. So there's geekery around.
Yes. It is everywhere. Rosemary asked me last week. We haven't formulated it yet. She's homeschooled, but she has some friends. Asked me. She just kind of sauntered into my office and was like, "So you know, Dad, could you show me how to play D&D? And I was like, yes, I can. That's going to happen, but why do you ask? And she starts talking about wanting to learn to DM. And so I grabbed my copy of the Dungeon Master's Guide and I read her the afterword, and I said, you know, I gotta admit, Kyle, I did go a little Riddle of Steel on her. No one, no LARPer, no story gamer, no board gamer can you trust. This hold up the, you know, hold up an AD&D book. This you can trust. This you can trust. So I hope she will. I hope she will start down the path. I imagine her erstwhile gaming group that she wants to at least get involved in is probably going to be, you know, a little bit more current year as far as their D&D. So. Michael Connor says, "Who's Miles Morales?" That's whoever's the. Depending on your point of view, it's an alternate universe Spider-Man. It's the kid taking the mantle for Spider-Man. I don't know. Marvel Comics stopped in 1989 for me. Okay. After that, I don't know what happened. Don't at me. No idea. I just know because my daughter has told me about it.
I don't know what happened before that. Like my son was also asking, how come you never see Peter Parker's parents? You know, it's just his aunt and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe his parents didn't like him. I said, I don't know.
Oh, so that's another. We're talking about superheroes, and Michael brings up the Venture Brothers again. You got to watch it for this, Kyle, because there is a supervillain henchman named Gary, who is the comic book guy. Mm-hmm. And he is hilarious. Now, they like actually developed his character as the series went, but they show him at home, like at the start of an episode, and his house is like my office, like the living room or the converted den area that he lives in with his mom looks like this. And he is a comic book nerd, actually, kind of guy. One of his friends dies. One of his fellow henchmen dies. And so he goes to Dr. Venture to get him to clone his friend. And Dr. Venture's like, do you have any idea how much that costs? I can't just spin up a clone of your dead best friend for free. And so he holds a comic book, and it's Fantastic Four #1. And when he holds it up, they freeze frame and put a frame around the video frame that is the valuation for like a condition 9.9 Fantastic Four or Avengers #1. And of course, it's like $250,000, which is what Dr. Venture's asking. But Dr. Venture has no idea. He's like, this is a comic book. This is a child. And so
what we need is, you know, forget about like Costa Rica accepting Bitcoin or whichever place it was. We need a country to accept collectible comics.
Yes.
Or CCDs as a currency. You go with your magic card or something.
Yeah, I need to find out if the government of Chile will grant me asylum for a wood grain.
You know, you're 17 years old and going on a hot date with a girl for the first time, and so you go to the fancy restaurant and you pay with your Magic the Gathering Black Lotus card. Exactly. Don't worry, honey. I got this.
Here you go, my good man. Take a couple of earth elementals for yourself. But as the episode progresses, nobody in Dr. Venture's compound realizes the value of the comic book. And as the episode progresses, everyone does something equally terrible to it. And periodically they'll bring up the valuation frame again. And by the end of it, It's been abandoned and is being used to scoop up. Somebody did like a flaming dog poop on the front porch of the houses, and the guy just like grabbed the magazine. And it's like you see it drop from like, you know, value $25, zero, condition ruined, value zero.
See, Michael Connor says Mike Morales is token Spider-Man. When I first glanced at his comment, I thought it said "Taken Spider-Man," and I had a mental picture of Spider-Man saying, "I have a particular set of skills."
Yeah, yeah. Who's going to be Spider-Man for the next for the next Marvel phase? Liam Neeson,
the geriatric Spider-Man.
Yeah, you know, Green Goblin is hovering on his board there in front of Spider-Man. So, Spider-Man, and he's like, "I don't know who you are. And I don't know where you came from, but I will find you, and I will kill you." Green Goblin's just like...
I watched another Liam Neeson movie yesterday called Ice Road. So apparently there's like these truckers that go across Lake Winnipeg and places like that in the winter.
Yeah, Ice Road truckers. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's insanely dangerous because if they go too slowly, then they'll fall through the ice, and if they go too fast, they'll skid out or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they have to be in a terrible hurry because there's been an explosion at a mine, so they've got to bring wellheads across to get the gas out so they can rescue the miners. But there's someone who doesn't want them to, and you know, it's no spoiler to say it's the evil corporate guy. I mean, we've all seen Aliens, you know, like.
But there's a Carter Burke here.
20,
I got.
Yeah, there's a Carter Burke. You know, the 20 Marines go. Mm-hmm. Along with the survivor from the last movie and corporate guy. If anyone in the group is going to betray anyone, who's it going to be? I mean, I think it's like the film producers, they're having a go at the the film writers and directors are having a go at the studios or something. If they make, because like those corporate guys are the ones who enable these movies to be made. These movies don't happen without those guys. So, all right, I'll put you in, but you'll be the villain. I was like, yeah, okay. I'm convinced it must be based on some producer, you know. But anyway, and I was looking at him doing this, and I thought, like, about 2/3 of the movie is just views of his back or his boots, and that's because it would be done by a stuntman because the guy's 69 years old.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Fishburne was also in it, but he didn't do any stunts. He just he fell on the ice and then fell through it. But you know, he didn't do any stunts because he's equal age and obese as well. So it's like it's just like I just thought, like, isn't it time to retire? And then I remembered, but there was another Neeson one that I watched a few weeks back called Cold Pursuit, where his son had been killed by druggies or something, so he goes out to kill them all. And that was also up in the snow. And I thought, did he make them all in the same season? He was just like, okay, while I'm up, and they're like,
he might have been like just like driving over a ridge on a daily basis, just like, look, I got to go do this stuff for cold season, and then I'll come back and we'll. You know,
and I was reminded of an interview where they asked him, "You keep remaking essentially the same movie. You know, where you're this old guy who's got these skills from his previous career and stuff, and you know, how come you keep doing that?" And he said, in his, you know, slightly Irish accented now, because he's mostly American accent, slightly Irish accented, rather melodious voice. Well, because they keep offering me absurd amounts of money, he said.
Yeah. I mean, that's you know, at the end of the day, that's really why you do. Because they backed up a truckload of money to my house. You know, why anything, right?
Yes, Paul says, I miss the Larry Fishburne of old, back in the days of Event Horizon and The Matrix. Yeah, I think there's a reason they didn't put him in the Matrix remake or whatever the hell they did recently. I watched it. It's like, you know, Keanu Reeves is kept in shape, and that chick, I've forgotten her name, but she's kept in shape. But Lawrence, no. Old Lawrence would not be out of place in a bar somewhere in, in the guts of Alabama somewhere.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. So there's a really fantastic movie that if you haven't seen, oh my God, Kyle, if you haven't seen The Last Detail with Jack Nicholson, have you seen it?
No, not
oh, it's a fantastic movie. It's about two basically lifetime Navy guys. It's like, it's set in the early 1970s, so you figure these guys probably joined in the late 1950s, and they're going to be there till the mid 1980s. And there's a very young Randy Quaid is in it, and he has to be taken to a prison in New Jersey or Philadelphia. I can't remember which, but he's basically being transported up the East Coast or down the East Coast or something like that, to serve like a 9-year prison sentence because he stole like $12 from a charity fund jar. Unfortunately, the charity fund was a charity being run by a vice admiral's wife. So they throw the book at him. And when they get the guy out, they're bemoaning the fact that here's a young man, he's 19 years old. They're lamenting the fact that he's basically going to be in jail until 1985. And he's going to have the prime of his life just torn away because of a stupid mistake. And when they're looking at their orders, they realize their orders have basically been written in such a way that they could hypothetically never take him to jail. And as long as they say that they're on their way to take him to jail and he's with them, they're still following their orders. And obviously, they can't do that. They can't, oh, okay, well, we'll just move in together and, live in a house together for 23 years and then it'll be fine. No. But they decide that the week that they're going to take like a weekend or 5 days or something like that and just take their good, sweet time. They're going to get him laid. They're going to get him drunk. They're going to get in a bar fight with him. He's going to get a chance to do all the fun stuff that he's going to miss.
Familiar, actually. I think I've seen the video cover in a store once, like 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, for years,
with a sailor hat cocked on his head.
Yeah. He's got a sailor hat, shirtless, and he's got a cigar. For years, they kicked around the idea of doing a sequel, like both of the I can't remember the other actor's name, but Nicholson and his counterpart have finally retired. Randy Quaid is in his 30s and obviously dishonorably discharged, and they all there's just kind of a confluence to meet up. Well, they actually finally did get around to making a sequel, but I've completely gone blank. Bryan Cranston plays Nicholson's spot. Steve Carell fills Randy Quaid's shoes, and Lawrence Fishburne plays opposite of Bryan Cranston. And when you said, a fat guy in Mobile, I was like, yeah, that's actually kind of the character he is at the end of the movie. But I can't speak for the sequel, but I do recommend seeing The Last Detail. It's good. It's not a military movie. I mean, they talk a lot about the injustice of being essentially an enlisted rating, but other than that, there's no anything. It could just be two policemen taking another civilian to jail under the same circumstances. But it is a good buddy comedy, and it's bittersweet in several places. Definitely a thumbs up on The Last Detail. You should.
Michael Connor says, for a far lefty, Liam makes a lot of money playing right-wing patriotic types. I didn't know he was a far lefty, and I think it's just because he's an actor, and
yeah,
he just acts. And who cares? It's as we've discussed. I mean, you guys probably got a vague idea of me and Bill's general political leanings, but not all the details, because that's not what the show is about. You guys don't tune in to hear my political rants. I've got a guy here in the gym who like always cracks laughing when I say what I think politically, and he says, he said, if you had a podcast, Kyle, where all you did was rant about politics for an hour, I'd listen. He said, I don't know if anyone else would subscribe, but I'd listen. And I said, yeah, we don't want to get Bill demonetized. I'd have to do that on my own thing. And he goes, yeah, I'd listen. We're not going to do that. That's not what it's about. We hear about gaming. And also, I don't think it's relevant to gaming, to media in general. We've had this discussion a few times before. I would play Maya Forg if it were any good. The fact that the author is essentially a Nazi, and I think he's been done for murder and stuff as well. I don't care. I mean, it's come out recently that Phil M.A.R. Barker, or whatever his name was, the Tecomel guy, apparently wrote some anti-Semitic book. I don't care. I mean, the media, or the book, the game, the movie, whatever, stands or falls on its own. And I don't really care about whether, a crappy book is not any better because the person is a moral saint. And an awful book or movie is not any worse because the person turns out to be, a serial killer or something. Who cares?
No. I mean, you're right. I'm gonna shock the crap. If there's anyone here who, like, audiobooks are a big thing now, but I mean, you go all the way back to even to like wax cylinder days. I mean, to the beginning of recorded audio, people reading things and recording them for you to listen to later for your pleasure has always been a thing. Always. Wax cylinders, wax discs, shellac discs, early magnetic tape, digital, whatever. So it's not just people getting Audible and that sort of thing. You can go way back into the 70s and 80s when Books for the Blind, you could go to the library and get audiobooks to listen to at home, whether you're blind or not. So there is a notorious serial killer in the United States. And I'm going to have to look the guy's name up. But here's the thing. If you listened to Books for the Blind as audiobooks in the 80s and 90s, before they really became a cottage industry, odds are if they were classics, if they were well-known books, odds are you were listening to this guy speak, because he's in.
Let's see. Because where do you draw the line too? I mean, is it the author of the book or the editor? What about the editor of the book? What if it were heavily edited by somebody and edited for content as well? How about the publisher of the book? How about the guy who read out the book on Audible, did the spoken version?
Yeah.
And if it's a movie, okay, all right, the producers are awful. What about the director? What about the writer? What about the lead actor? What about the extra? What about the waitress, the unusually good-looking waitress who brings them their meal in the diner in the middle of the movie? And how big do they have to be before you decide that you're not going to watch this movie or whatever? It's like, in the end, who cares? Just let the thing stand on its own, and if it's good, it's good. I mean, what if it turns out that your house was built by a member of the Klan? Are you going to tear your house down and rebuild it? No.
Yeah.
It's silly.
And it's Ed Kemper, by the way. Ed Kemper. While he's been in prison, and he will be in prison forever, he was an awful, awful person. Books for the Blind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I went blind tomorrow, and once all the other stuff was aside, I realized hey, I still want to enjoy the Lord of the Rings, and somebody got me a audiobook of Lord of the Rings. I mean, nowadays when audiobooks are done, they're practically cinematic in production. They'll get famous people to read them. Sometimes some books are like audio dramas, like you know, talk about a person sitting in a meadow somewhere, and they'll like have wind sounds and birds tweeting and that sort of thing. But
well, Praxis says his 70s audiobook of At the Mountains of Madness was read by Donald Sutherland. That would work. I can picture that.
That actually that sounds fantastic. I would totally listen to a book read by Donald Sutherland, but only if he did it in the voice of Oddball from. So let me tell you, baby, we get to the mountain, right? We're thinking prehistoric. I don't know from this. We drill down into the ice, baby, and it's Weirdsville. Okay. Very spooky. And my co-pilot, he's like, Tekali. Very freaky, baby. Very freaky. There we go. You're welcome, everyone.
That was a good performance. What about craft services? Is he referring to something that I should know?
just like I think he's talking about, you know, okay, well, what if the screenwriter is a terrible person? What if the producer is a terrible person? What if the craft services are terrible people? Do you go over to the craft services table and say, "Give me a roast beef on with Swiss"?
I was thinking of going down to the road for Subway for lunch later, but before I get that meatball sub, I'm going to have to query the person behind the counter as to their personal life. You know, like, is there domestic violence there or something like that? You know,
yeah.
Because if they're not a nice person, I just can't have that meatball sub. It would just be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, and Michael Connor brings up, I think, a very salient point. I draw the line at attacking the audience or using the money I give them against me, and that's I think that's a fair line. You know, I mean, if I can see directly, and this is very true. Disney was quick to digitally erase this, but it's in the common cultural knowledge now, and you can't undo that yet. I'm sure Disney's working on something that will. But although the way their stock's been performing, they might not have enough money to go back to releasing stuff on VHS. But in the Mulan movie, off in the background of one of the big sweeping scenes, you can see a Chinese concentration camp. I'm sorry. I'm not going to. No. That is the most direct. We are directly contributing to human suffering and misery. But like, again, you go back to, okay, by percentage, a town, a city, a village will have a certain number of miscreants who do things that are absolutely abominable and you don't want to associate with. So watch from beginning to end the credits of any major blockbuster. All of the CGI people, all of the craft services people, second crew, third crew, editors, green screen effects people, handlers, pullers, loaders.
There's
on and on
probably
and on. Somebody
who plays 5th edition.
Oh, Kyle, let's not say things that we can't take back, bud. but no, I mean, you're right. There's you're basically looking at a population of a small town. Somebody in that group knows where a body's buried. And I don't mean that in the metaphorical sense. Somebody in that group, statistics demand that somebody in that group. I took sociology. I took deviant sociology. Somebody in that group, many somebodies in that group And given that it's Hollywood, probably many somebodies in the group.
Somebody in that group's neutral evil.
Yeah, there are more than a few neutral evil somebodies, but we don't know who they are. So you can sit in the woods wrapped in leaves, eating bugs, or you can take the chance that somebody that put your house together, somebody that sewed your clothes, somebody that packed your groceries, somebody that made your refrigerator, somebody that talks to you on a nightly basis on the internet about Dungeons and Dragons might not be the best person in the world. Michael says, the question is, what does Kathleen Kennedy know? I don't know. And I don't want to, I don't want to know.
I think CEOs by definition don't really know much. They've spent all their time working their way up the corporate level, so they don't really know much. It's I might have mentioned last time I read about Stalin from an account of Stalin's secretary until 1927. And after 1927, he got out of Soviet Russia and through Iran and British India and then off to Europe, where he wrote his memoirs, which unfortunately haven't been translated into English, but there was this guy talking about him. And he said Stalin doesn't actually do any work. He doesn't do anything all day. He said I'd go into his office with, a bunch of papers or something and say, "Oh, comrade secretary, there are some decisions that need to be made." And Stalin would say, "Well, comrade, what do you think?" And the guy would go, "I think this should be referred to the Central Party Committee for further discussion." "Very well, comrade, you do that." And so he'd go off, and he's like, what the hell is the guy doing all day? He's not making any decisions. He's not reading any. He didn't read those papers. He's not. What does he do all day? But Stalin had a bunch of phones on his desk. And what had happened was that when they were coming to install a modern, for that time, phone system in the Kremlin, Stalin realized that it was one of the old physical systems where you had the women who would physically connect the phones.
Yeah, switchboard.
Yeah, but they'd physically plug them into that. And he got worried that they'd be listening into conversations and knowing what was going on. He got worried about spies. So he got this Czechoslovak communist guy who was an electrician. He called him in. He had to call in someone from outside the Soviet Union. So he got this Czech guy to set it all up and then had him taken away and executed afterwards on the sort of supposedly for disloyalty to the party. But I think it was just the old principle of, the pharaoh buries the workers in the secret tomb kind of thing, so they can't tell anyone. Anyway, so he has that poor guy executed. And Stalin just sat listening in on people's phone conversations all day. So he'd listen to the deputy secretary talking to the second deputy secretary and their party line chats that they had for their meetings when they were miles apart and stuff. He just sat there listening to people's conversations all day. So he knew not only how they felt about him, but how they felt about each other. And then he could play them off against each other and he'd do all this politicking, So at least until 1927, when we had that eternal account of him, he didn't do any work at all. He just did all those calls back and forth and listened in. In other words, what he was doing was he was collecting information so that he could get a bonus on his intrigue roll and continue working his way up to be undisputed dictator of Soviet Russia. I think a lot of CEOs are basically like that. They rise to their CEO position by just doing all that intrigue and maneuvering their way up to the top. They don't necessarily know what the hell is going on in their organization in terms of its actual supposed purpose of mining or selling clothes or whatever that organization does. They've intrigued their way to the top. So what does Kathleen Kennedy know? Probably nothing at all.
Yeah. I mean, you know what you're talking about with Stalin. When I worked in IT, when I worked in corporate IT, we had we were the only department that got up and went places. Now, every once in a while, the guys who were in charge of IBM hardware would go down to ops and talk to the ops guys. But generally speaking, the 24/7 ops guys watched data. They were like Cypher in the Matrix, just literally sitting back, feet up on consoles, watching green screen terminals. Even in the 90s, IBM green screen terminals with data just scrolling up, watching to see if anything made the terminal chirp and stopped the flow. And if it did, they might call production control to say, hey, your job is stopped, or they might just clear the stop and let it keep going. Same with the tandem system guys, same with the programmers who programmed the IBM. You came to work, you sat down in your cube or your office until lunch, then you came back and you sat down again until 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and then you went home. We in the IT department constantly, printer needs a toner cartridge, so-and-so needs a new keyboard, such and such has a new monitor that they've ordered. So we were all over the place. Every so often, somebody from human resources would swing by just to say hello and see how we were doing in the IT department. How's it going, guys? Oh, we're doing fine. Good to see you, Bob. Good to see you, Kim. Whatever. And they'd want to talk to us. Your audio is chopping out on us, Kyle.
Did that? I'm picturing Limburg from.
Yeah. Oh, it was very much Lumberg. It was very much Lumberg. They'd swing by and they'd talk, and they always tried to pad it like we didn't know what they were doing. Like, my computer at home is running a little slow. Do you guys have any? Is there anything you can suggest? Yeah, you can defrag your hard drive and empty your recycle folder. Do that. Thanks. By the way, have you heard anything? Has anyone said anything to you about the new 401k? Anybody talking about how they feel about that? Just curious, Oh yes, that is totally unexpected. Yeah.
Doing their corporate recon.
Yeah, exactly. Corporate recon, rolling on their recon skill as they swing through the, they'd swing through the IT department, and we just kind of watch them go and just go back to it. And,
buddy of mine was in IT. If he left his closet, he would use his hands as blinders and walk fast.
No, I can believe it. I can believe it. But the corporate setting, this is what I don't get. On our own, individually, we were all creative guys in our cubicles. I made a Christmas tree one year out of discarded computer cards. You guys, it's like it has a serial port on it, or it's a modem. It goes in your computer. We had boxes and boxes of those things that were broken or out of date or just unneeded. And our cubes had carpeted walls. Well, if you've ever seen the back of like a circuit card, there's solder points that basically there's all these little tiny hooks. So one Christmas, I just went and got the box and just decorated my walls because they're lovely silver and green. And I made a triangle shape on the wall for a Christmas tree. And it was quite lovely, I thought. But all of us individually were fairly creative in our own ways. I printed out on a large format printer an illustration from the monster manual and had that as a poster in my office. But as a group, you know, we were just kind of corporate robots. And having been in that environment, it makes me wonder how, when I look at like the giant list of creators of modern D&D, like, how do you sit in a cubicle farm and create? How do you, I don't, maybe you can explain it, maybe somebody in the audience can explain it. How do you sit in that environment and be creative in a way?
I don't know. I mean, for me, creativity requires some quiet. I mean, there's a reason there's not many novelists who have small children. You know, it's you need some quiet. I recently read a big collection of old letters and articles of George Orwell from the last few years of his life. And in it, he was talking about how, so he had an apartment, or he had a house in London, and he was renting a cottage in Jura, up on this Scottish island, which had no electricity or gas or anything. It was a small farm and that, and he was moving up there so that he could finish his book. Because he said down in London, people were often ringing him up. And this would have been on one of the old telephones where you pull the thing off the wall and you did rotary dial and that. He said people were constantly ringing him up, and people were constantly asking him to review books and write opinion articles and things like that. And he just needed some peace and quiet. He took his son with him, but he had a housekeeper, so that made it a bit easier. So even like London in the late 1940s, which by modern standards was a place without many distractions, because there wasn't this, somebody had to physically ring you up, dial the number and everything, and you had to physically answer the phone, as opposed to this where you could just scroll through and then you start at 8:30 and then suddenly it's 1 a.m. He didn't have anything like that, but even that distraction. So I think, some creative people mostly do need some peace and quiet, unless they're creative. I mean, just to do little Instagram post.
Yeah.
But that's not a very high level of creativity required, and it's probably not going to be reprinted in 80 years like Orwell's writing is. So
nobody is going to be trawling through Insta posts or your Facebook news feed or your Twitter account in 80 years going, this was a very insightful post that Bill Sylvie made on Facebook in the year 2021.
They might dig back through 10 years of Twitter or Facebook posts to discredit you if you're a politician or something. But
yes.
But beyond that, nobody's going and picking up your genius writing or something.
Hey, what are the stories from corporate D&D land that is told to be amusing and like, oh, there we were, that to me just falls flat, and it points up why I think modern D&D doesn't appeal to me. Why it falls flat to me is somebody came to work, and I don't know who this was, and I don't care. So if you guys want to look this up and try and track down this story, I'll give you as much detail as I can. But somebody came to work at Wizards of the Coast, and they were sitting in cubicles. It's cubicle land apparently up there in Washington State, and they're sitting in their cubicle. And they have an open, I mean, nowadays, I guess you would call it a Slack message board or a Discord or something like that. But it's basically, it's an open, active, updating chat session or message board or whatever. And he was assigned a certain chunk of developing the world of Greyhawk because back in the early days of third edition, oh, if only Lord Corian. Back in the early days of third edition, they were pushing Greyhawk as the default setting. I, as a consumer, never saw it. I never got the vibe that they gave a shit about Greyhawk. Straight out of the box, third edition felt like an edition for Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance and so on. But I digress. So he made some edit or comment on it. And whoever was in overall charge of this project, that was also in his area of responsibility. And he talks about how he hears this bellow across the office. Who is this guy's user handle? And why did you change this thing that he changed? And they all had a good laugh about it, I guess. Or he had a good laugh about it later once he got dressed down. And like, what the hell kind of creative environment is that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, that is office interaction that you would expect out of, oh, I don't know, an electronic funds transactor or a telephone exchange or the accounting department of a tie manufacturing company. I don't see how you can have 5 main writers, 10 main writers, and then you know, well, these 6 people, their area of responsibility was magic items, and these 12 people were responsible for editing, and then we've got these 6 people are sensitivity readers. You know, I would go berserk working under those. Even when I was working for Gary, and it started out with 30 of us and eventually winnowed down to 11 of us. Rarely did someone's area intrude into someone else's area of the city, and we have to have a confab. Even though there were many of us working on the project, our things were our own things, and we, you know, it was not this cloistered, you know, like there's the organizational chart for it was Gary and a big box that just said everybody else, which is how it should have been. If I had to answer to 4 other people before I could even send my manuscripts to Gary, I would have gone bananas. I would have quit that thing with a quickness. And I don't understand. I don't understand saying you know.
Well, Damien comments, sometimes creativity appears as the mind rebelling against the banality of the day job, and he's speaking from experience. And yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, Einstein was a patent clerk while he came up with the theories of relativity, but he just filed the patents and made sure they didn't clash with any others, and the rest of his day was free. So instead of staring into space, he didn't have Facebook in 1903 or whenever it was. So he had to think, you know, pursue other hobbies.
Yeah. But we'd still be using leaded gas and coal power if Einstein had Facebook.
But what Bill is talking about is how a place is ostensibly dedicated to creating a certain thing can actually inhibit creating that certain thing. Because, like, you know, Einstein's patent office wasn't trying to create new ideas. They were just trying to file existing ideas. It wasn't trying to create anything new. Whereas, you know, we would hope the Wizards of the Coast is trying to come up with some new stuff. But yeah. I don't think they really are. I mean, the thing is, what Bill's talking about is how the environment probably doesn't help creativity. I don't think they're trying to. I don't think they're trying to be creative. I think they're just trying to reshuffle old stuff. I mean, but that's just what our society's been for the last 20, 25 years. and that's why there's been endless remakes of Spider-Man and Batman and all the rest. And some of them have been good, and some of them not so good. But we've just got a retread society. It's like I saw a comment the other day, like that the movie The Wedding Singer, the Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, it was set in like it was made in 1988 or something, and it was set in 1986. So it was set 12 years before it was made. And they said, okay, does 2010, being 12 years ago, feel as retro to us now as 1986 felt in 1998? And it doesn't, because from, in the 80s and 90s, there was a rapid pace of change. A lot happened from 1960 to 1970 to 1980 to 1990 or whatever. And then things culturally sort of didn't change hugely after that. We're quicker at disseminating any cultural aspects, but we're not really quicker at coming up with them, because they go through so many filters, and there's the large corporation filter, but there's also the politically correct filters, which without getting political about things, if you have to think, is what I'm saying going to offend somebody, that will tend to slow down the creative process as well, if you're having to put it through that filter, because you'll start to think about more and more people that you could offend, and whatever you do, you're going to offend somebody somewhere in the world, however inadvertently. I mean, if in the Western world you write about, you present homosexuality as a bad thing, the Saudis will think that it's a great book, and the Western world will think it's awful and offensive. And then if you write a book depicting a homosexual relationship as a good thing, in Saudi Arabia, some will get beheaded for reading it, and here in the Western world, they'll think, okay, we should make that into a movie and call it Brokeback Mountain. So whatever you do, you're going to offend someone somewhere in the world. So if you're thinking about that, you just end up paralyzed. And like Bill said, sitting in a forest somewhere covered with leaves.
Yeah.
And not doing anything. So I think in some respects, the availability of the internet, and therefore access to lots of different cultures and being able to spread information so rapidly and so widely, has slowed down the pace of change. Because people talk about change, but I mean, like going from 4 gig of RAM to 16 gig of RAM is not quite the change that we got from going from a 386 to a 386 with internet.
Yeah. And it's you mentioned the time span. I think in 1998 in 1988 my computer had a 1 megahertz processor, 39 kilobytes of memory, one floppy disk drive that stored 170K, and was as slow as the day is long. Plugged into a TV, 16 colors, 40 column screen. In 1998, I had a computer that in raw megahertz was only 200 times faster, but across the board was thousands of times faster. But the difference between, say, I don't know, 1998 to 2008, just in computing terms, is a pretty significant jump also. But 2008 to 2018, not so much. I could throw you together a computer from 2008 that is still, a very useful computer for, some lightweight gaming. You can definitely still surf the internet on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying is you're absolutely right. The sense of nostalgia between 1986 and 1998 is vastly more different than it is between 2012 and 2022.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah, Michael Connor's right. The censorship has slowed down progress, but a lot of the censorship has been self-censorship. I mean, and this is the same is true throughout history. I mean, you know, you don't need legal penalties. If you're having Sunday afternoon dinner with your grandma, you don't need legal penalties to stop you throwing around profanity at the dinner table. You know, because you're having an afternoon tea with your grandmother, you know not to do that. So self-censorship has always been much greater than any, you know, even the most repressive societies. I'm sure even in Soviet Russia in the middle of the purges in the 1930s, or in modern North Korea, that people are still worried about offending their old grandma on Sunday afternoon tea.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's just the nature of it. It's just humans interacting with one another. They'll hold back in certain areas.
To put a smiley face on it, in The Death of Stalin, which is just brilliant. I mean, it's absolutely one of the funniest movies you'll ever see. You just gotta not stop and remind yourself that everything in the movie actually happened, and just kind of ride the laughs of it. You know, it's like watching To Be or Not to Be, you know, the Mel Brooks movie. You gotta just kind of take it and roll with the laughter and think about it later. But there's a scene Michael Palin plays. It's one member of the Central Committee. I can't remember, but Stalin had imprisoned his wife. He had sent her to Gulag. He had sent him to Gulag. He let him go if he denounced his wife. And so he did. I think it was Molotov. Palin played Molotov, but Beria comes to see him in his apartment, and this is after Stalin has died, and Beria is trying to build a power base. Malenkov is trying to build a power base along with Steve Buscemi's Nikita Khrushchev. And so Beria is trying to curry favor by letting out political prisoners, which he did in real life. And so there's Beria standing in the apartment with Malenkov, and he's like, you know, well, what would your wife say? And he's like, oh, that traitor, that backstabbing, horrible. And as he's going into this eruptive rant about his wife, Beria turns around and opens the doors, and she walks in, and like a light switch, he's like, darling, yeah, oh, it's so good to see you. Oh, bless you, you know, and it's a very tearful reunion. And that goes back to what you're saying, you know, there's of common decency transcending politics. He didn't just keep going on a rant and denouncing her when she came in, because that's my wife, and
unless he might have done it if he found another wife in the meantime. It would be an awkward bit. I got shown, I don't know why Instagram does this to me, but I got shown this random Friends clip where Ross has made Rachel pregnant. And he apparently, I don't remember the show.
I never watched the show.
But he's just received the news, and he's got his current girlfriend on the one hand, and then Rachel's father on the other hand. And so he turns to the father and says, oh, it was a complete accident, and I love Rachel and she's fantastic. And his girlfriend says, what? It's like, no. She doesn't mean anything to me. It's like he's turning back and forth like that. So, being not willing to offend anyone, he ends up offending everyone. And the alternative, when you're a corporation, is that you just produce this bland thing. So, I mean, it may just be that a large corporation isn't the way to get great creativity. You need the guy who's a shoe salesman during the day and he's bored, or he's a patent clerk and he's bored, and he starts doing stuff. And did I just compare Gygax to Einstein? Yes. So
absolutely. You know, you want to talk about spark of genius. You want to you want to talk about making that next quantum leap. I don't care what the field is. I mean, hey, the person who decided that peanut butter shouldn't just be peanuts mashed into a paste, but if you sweeten it a little bit, it's pretty damn good, and not just like a protein paste. I would put that guy on the same level as Einstein. And you know who I'd put a step above him? The dude that said, let's put that on some bread and put some jelly on it. Jam, excuse me. That guy, there's a genius. There's bottling lightning, man. And, you know, General Foods didn't come to that guy and say, here's $5,000 or, you know, whatever would have been an exorbitant amount of money back in the 1900s, whatever. He was hungry, and he had his wife's grape preserves, and he had this new peanut butter. And so he cut some bread and said, I'm going to put these, I'm going to have that. And if he's not the guy that said, also have a glass of cold milk with it, well, then that guy's a genius too. But the point is, when you have a corporate kitchen, you get McDonald's. When you have a hungry man in a kitchen full of disparate items, you get the peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a cold glass of milk.
It does seem like a bachelor pad kind of meal.
It is.
The comic book guy would, you know, he just looks in his fridge, and what has he got? He's got some Wonder Bread, some peanut butter and jelly, and that's it. That's all and some milk.
And some milk.
Yeah. I mean, he's got stacks and stacks of soft drinks. He's like got a whole, his laundry cupboard doesn't have a vacuum cleaner. It has, it's shelves and shelves of soft drinks.
But Diet Coke, because he's living healthy, Kyle. He's got Diet Coke and Diet Mountain Dew in there because he's living healthy. Okay, you're going to have to field this one, Kyle. I am actually, it's not even a super chat. I'm putting it up on screen. Answer for this, Kyle.
What is the guy that thought up Vegemite? Well, it was a leftover from alcohol. Leftovers brewer's yeast extract.
Which, I mean, when you think about it, it makes perfect.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, there was a little audio breakup, and I didn't realize you were. But no, I mean, it makes perfect sense that someone would eat Vegemite because it's, you know, you pour off the brew, everybody starts having a few glasses, and you're like, I'll give you $5 if you eat some of that black sludge.
Well, no, because look, so there was originally Marmite that the British had, which is this very similar thing. But I think it got interfered with in World War One. Like, you know, we weren't getting the shipping over here, so we started doing it over here. And yeah, it's an extract of leftover of brewer's yeast from brewing, and I don't know how they produce it, but it's very high in B group vitamins. Very high in B group vitamins, so it is actually nutritious. It's just insanely salty, so it has a very, very strong taste. My wife knows a lot of Japanese people, and she says, funny when you introduce them to Vegemite and they go to try it and they see this dark spread and they assume it's like Nutella or something, so they'll go to get a big spoon of it. And no, you don't do a big spoon of it, you just do a relatively small amount. Strong vitamin B. It was heavily marketed in the interwar period and after World War II as well. People were doing things, they were treating it like beef stock or something and like smearing their roast beef in it. like before they roasted it, they'd smear it with Vegemite and stuff. And I've never tried it. I'm not inclined to, but yeah.
That seems awfully
the Vegemite
salty.
on toast and the popular ones. Some people will have Vegemite on toast with a fried egg on top or a poached egg on top. I don't like it myself. And the big thing, kids love a cheese and Vegemite sandwich. Yeah, this is the block cheese, not like camembert or something, but yeah, the cheese that comes in the big, like the tasty or the and
the cheese that tastes orange.
Yeah. Well, we don't put the orange dye in it here in Australia. The only time we see orange cheese is in McDonald's cheeseburgers.
That's it's American. Yeah. Does this look like a traffic cone that got melted down? Yes, it does. That's from the United States then.
Yeah, we get the yellow one. Which, as I said last week, there was that Brit TV show where he said the host said that he'd had some British cheese first, and he said it didn't taste like cheese. It tasted like a Tupperware container that had cheese in it. So yeah, the big block, and yeah, so that's Marmite, and sorry, that's a Vegemite, and that's a thing for people. Marmite's a bit bigger in New Zealand because they're a bit closer to the UK culturally and stuff. Like if Britain ever becomes a republic, the royal family can go and live in New Zealand, and they'll be very welcomed there. They'll remain a constitutional monarchy, and so they have Marmite and all that sort of stuff. Nobody has Vegemite and jam mixed together because that's mixing your salt and your sweet, and it would be awful. Yeah, so that's Vegemite. It lasts forever as well as honey. It lasts forever. It would be great iron.
Yeah, not even bacteria wants anything to do with it.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I've never seen it go off. Apparently, it can if you leave it long enough. I don't know what attacks it, a mold or something. I don't know, but I've never
something with a bigger appetite than me.
I've never seen it. Yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes you put in the pantry and you forget about it, like tomato sauce or ketchup, as you guys call it. We know that goes off because you open the bottle and
yeah,
that's fermented. There was this very short-lived Aussie sitcom years ago called Brass Monkeys, set on an Australian Antarctic base. Brass monkeys from the old saying,
cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey.
A brass monkey, yeah. And they had a Russian scientist with them on exchange, and the Russian guy's giving them their vodka, his vodka, and saying, "What is Australian national drink?" And they say, "Oh, here you go, mate." And they had his bottle of tomato sauce. Be left in the pantry and fermented. And he drinks it back. Oh, it's very good.
Somebody was doing an AMA. This is on Reddit. People will profess to be experts or people just with certain life experiences, and then they'll do Ask Me Anythings, which are live, semi-live, text-only question and answer sessions. Ask me anything. I am a blank, ask me anything. I am a doctor, ask me anything, that sort of thing. And there was a fellow who did one, which if it's true, it's pretty interesting reading. But I mean, anyone can claim to be anything on the internet. World-renowned role-playing game developer, for example. I mean, who's going to believe that? But anyway, this guy said that he had worked at McMurdo Sound, which is a fairly large scientific base outpost. Basically, any stuff that goes on in the interior of Antarctica, all kind of for the United States concern in Antarctica, all goes from McMurdo Sound. That's where planes come in. That's where ships come in. During the summer, it is it is busy, busy, and they have upwards of 200 people. They have a film festival. They have a couple of restaurants, a movie theater, obviously. But during the cold season, the winter, ostensibly, when it gets cold in Australia, in Antarctica, he was basically one of the station keeping folk when the staff is down to the 50s and 60s in terms of numbers. And he said he got the neatest thing he got there, that he got to do there was kind of if they really, really like you, they will you get to they haven't depending on what you like scotch and water or something like that, but the water comes from melted ice from a deep core sample, so it's pure water that has gone untouched for millions of years. They've drilled out this half-kilometer borehole or whatever it is, and you can have that. I don't know though, man. I've seen John Carpenter's The Thing. I wouldn't be about that. Oh, hey, Kyle, come on over, share a drink with us. And the next thing I know, your head opens up like a flower and a tentacle comes out.
So we're asked, is it true Australia lost 2 more flightless birds? No, only 1. We didn't try again. We're not like the Germans.
You ceded the battlefield to the emu.
So yeah, it was emus. So out in Western Australia, the government had, they did the usual post-war thing, the soldier settler thing. They sent soldiers out to settle the land, and it was always, there's a reason that it hadn't been settled 100 years before then. It was always this miserable desert sort of land, and they tried to blame the emus and said, oh, it's just that the emus are eating all the crops. So they sent out this Major Meredith, I think his name was, and of artillery with a couple of men and a Maxim machine gun on the back of the truck to brass up all the emus. But the problem was that it took too long to set up the machine gun, and the emus were also scared of the sound of the vehicle. So they'd roll up and start setting up the machine gun, and the emus would bugger off. And by the time they were firing, the emus were mostly out of range of the machine gun. So they tried that for about 6 weeks, and then they gave up. And then he was ordered to give up and go home.
So let me see if I've got this straight. Let me just make sure I've got this right. Emus are out of control. What do? Roll up on them with some Jeeps and some 50s, cut them down. Sir, they're out of range.
Oh, so no, it was a Lewis gun, actually.
Okay, Lewis gun. Lewis gun. A little different firearm. Lewis guns, a little bit more primitive than the 50. So lower rate of fire. But would you rather be shot with a Lewis gun or a 50 cal, Kyle? Because it matters, right? Yeah, Lewis gun. Let's hose them down. Well, they ran away. Oh, crap. Let's drive over there and they keep running away. I mean, it kind of makes me wonder if they had kept pursuing them, would they have fallen in the classic fire sack ambush and found out that the emus had short-range point defense weapons? I honestly think the Australians played it smart. They didn't get sucked into an ambush without a proper infantry screen.
So, yeah, maybe the emus were waiting for them to close to melee. We're going to take them out with picking.
I have played. Let me tell you what. The first time I ever played friggin' Far Cry 3 and was on foot and saw a cassowary. Let me just say, cassowaries from that one encounter going forward, cassowaries get the death penalty in Far Cry 3. If I happen to fire up Far Cry 3 ever again in the future, if I see a cassowary, I will brass it up.
So they brass it up and they go home. What I want to know is it about this Major Meredith's subsequent career, and did he get a campaign medal? Yeah. 1932 Emu War. But yeah, so it's they were hooking into those poor old emus and not getting any.
Yeah. So Luther asks, when am I and my partner in crime from the wrong side of the world gonna start a D&D topic? Well, I mean, you know, we're here for you.
D&D earlier, but you showed up late, Luther.
That's so, right.
I'm not the one not getting any D&D. You missed out on the pizza too.
Yeah, so. Exactly. We all had pizza, Luther. We all had. I had a piece. Kyle got some local mints.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is what happens when you're late to the game.
I told you when we were starting. You show up late, no pizza.
But yeah, the Emu War eventually was given up on, and they decided just to put up fences around their farms instead.
Yeah,
and that worked.
It did.
But to this day, I mean, you can eat emu. You can go to a restaurant up north in northern part of Australia and eat emu. I think it's available in various posh restaurants here down under, and I mean in the southern part of the country. But yeah, people, it's a pretension thing. People just eat it to say that they've eaten that kind of thing, and you know.
Right. It's like if you're in Florida, you have gator or snake. You know,
yeah.
Say, oh, we eat gator.
It doesn't actually taste that much better than just having beef or chicken or something, but
yeah,
people do it. Though you know the egg is a ridiculous size, though.
Yeah, make a hell of a lot of pancakes with that.
Yeah, or just a big omelet. Yeah, I mean, it does make you, when you see that sort of piece, it does kind of make you think that there could be a trade in D&D in various animal parts, particularly monstrous animals and the eggs and all the rest.
Yeah, true. That's one thing I always liked about D&D. Like when I was a kid, you know, the first AD&D book I got was the Monster Manual, and I love the fact that so many monsters, the eggs are worth this much money on the open market, like owl bear eggs, dragon eggs, manta, just anything Griffin. You can think of. Griffin, hippogriff. If it lays eggs, somebody in the open market wants to buy them.
Yep.
Now, does that mean the syndics of Greyhawk are having a frittata of hippogriff eggs? Or they have their own private army of hippogriffs? That's up to you, the dungeon master, to figure out.
Well, there is in one of the random tavern generators floating around on the internet. There is there's a menu generator, which includes you can have fantasy options if you want. So there's things like a braised basilisk tail, or the braised minotaur tail.
Yeah.
And you know, a cockatrice comb and that sort of thing.
So there's the question I'm bouncing out to you guys. If you're a human or an elf or a dwarf or a halfling or half orc, well, let's leave half orcs out of the equation because come on, they're probably going to eat anything anyway. Or gnome. Is it cannibalism to eat a minotaur, or is that just steak? Question from Tunkatog.
Well, it makes me think of one of the most D&D movies ever, Your Highness. It's called Your Highness, and it mocks all those things. And there's a bit where they go into a labyrinth, and there's a minotaur, and one guy gets assaulted by the minotaur. The minotaur's humping him like a dog humping a leg, or whatever. And later on, when they kill the minotaur, the guy's trying to cut the horn off the minotaur as a trophy, and he can't. Yeah. It's just embedded in the head. And then so later on, you see him with something else dangling from around his neck instead.
Oh,
So
Lord.
that's one of the reasons it's really a D&D movie, because you just know that every game table is going to have a player who says, I take a trophy from him. And the DM's like, oh, that's gross. And tries to discourage him by saying, no, the horn won't come off. All right, I'll take his other horn then. And oh, God.
Tonka Todd says, when do we get to see our bro from Down Under in Gamma World or the first Ed game? That's really, I mean, it's tomorrow morning where you're at.
Yeah.
So getting Kyle into it
behind us in many ways.
Yes. Kyle's over there like, greetings, man from the past. I find your ways quaint.
No, for me, it's
I
just
greet you from the future.
thing. I could do one online stream thing a week, and so I do this.
Well, I from the bottom of my heart, at least, I thank you.
If I'm in the game group, I have to share the speaking time with several other people. But here I only have to spare the speaking time with one other person, and I prefer the attention. You know, that's in all humility. It's not about you; it's about me.
And we've played D&D with Kyle before. I dropped his character into the pit right in the opening of the Cobalt.
That's
cave.
the real reason. That's the real reason.
Kyle's just pissed because I killed his character in Keep on the Borderlands, but he does get to play from time to time. I'm guessing based on your answer, you're not going to be able to make the GUOGC, or are you?
Well, I haven't looked at all the schedule of all the stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it officially starts tomorrow, which I guess would be the day after tomorrow. No, it would still be tomorrow for you. Understand. What year is it there? 2067? 1891? What? I don't know. Anyway, so
I don't know. The last few weeks have felt like several years because we've got an election campaign going on. So
no, God love you.
Painful. It's been rather painful.
But check out the schedule. I sincerely hope you can be there. I mean, and guys, I've said this before, and Kyle is as much part of this show as everything else, you know. And like on the rare occasions, if he's here and a guest is, if it's going well, it's Kyle. You know, it just. I really appreciate you being here. So yeah, do check out the schedule. And if you're just now stopping by the way, Kyle, I don't know if you checked the metrics. We have 1,080 viewers now, which is pretty awesome. We have 1,080.
So what's our next target? I suppose we have to set that after the convention.
Oh gosh. Well, I said I would do an in-person face-to-face con if we hit 10,000, which is a safe bet, because that's not going to happen. But realistically, just so I cannot be a dick and say, well, if I get 10,000 subs, I'll do a real con. So we'll have to see. That's like your parents saying, well, if you repaint the house, I'll raise your allowance. Thanks. I don't know. Maybe another 1,000 is just a good solid bet, because it took about a year. Well, no, it took about a year to get about 600. But we're getting more now. But
let's consult the player's handbook, because the question is, what character class is the show?
Thief.
That's what I was going to go with, but I didn't want to say it. Thief. Okay, no. So 1,250. Oh well, we should have waited till 1,250 for the con.
Yeah, but I got monetized and started bouncing off the walls.
Well, maybe you've got a 10% experience bonus.
Oh, maybe that's true.
16 decks or whatever, and so yeah. So really, it looks like 1,080, but it's actually 1,250, and we need to do the con to level up. So the next one is 2,500. So let's say 2,500 then.
All right.
What are we going to do at 2,500? Another con.
So 2,500. What are we going to do at 2,500? Yeah, another con. 2,500 or next June, whichever comes first, or next May rather, whichever comes first. But if we hit 2,500, or I guess technically 2,501, I'll figure something out. I will figure something out, but I think you're right. I think that should be the goal. I definitely think that should be the goal. And if I wake up one morning and we're at name level and I can build a guild, I'll fly to Australia and we'll live stream from your house.
What's the name level for the? How many XP is that for the?
I think it's Master Thief, and it's
160,000. Oh, so,
yeah.
So to achieve 9th level is 110,000.
So 110,000. I think at that point I will have had to have shifted to doing React videos, where I just steal people's TikTok stuff and put it on screen and go,
oh, I hate those.
Wow, look at that.
Come up,
oh my God. Oh my God.
It's like military veteran reacts to, and like, oh, fuck off. Just come up with your own stuff, man.
Yeah. I appreciate the grift. I appreciate the grift. I cannot argue with the grift. I like there's a couple of guys, they're North Korean defectors who live in South Korea, and their grift is reacts to, and they just show they just gather clips off of the internet from like the U.S. Department of Defense.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I'm picturing like North Korean defectors react to the Kardashians.
Oh, they've done react to pop culture stuff too, but it's mostly oh, today we are going to try an American MRE. Oh my gosh, it's so much food. Wow, this is really good. I have never tasted this before. Does this go on a cracker? And I'm like, come on, you guys are 5 and 7 years out of North Korea at this point. The quaint, culture shock thing. It's kind of wearing thin, but it's still moderately entertaining. And again, I appreciate the grift. I can appreciate the gift, the grift. If it's between 110,000 viewers and the Dungeon Delver reacts to this new pop song, and I'm just doing this for 8 minutes. With like me down in the corner and the official video playing over most of the screen, and I'm pausing it to keep the copyright demons off my back. Like, oh man, let's back up. I got to hear that piece again. Because there's a lot of there's an opera singer. She has a lovely voice, and now I can't remember. I mentioned her on the channel before, but her react videos are actually nice because she will stop the song and explain, like, okay, I'm listening to Rainbow in the Dark by Dio for the first time. Here's like the way he's singing. Here's how, that's what this is called, and that sort of thing. And it's quite nice, but the rest of it's garbage. Not the rest of what she does is garbage, just the rest of the reacting to music. Like, I've never heard this before. Oh, Dungeon Minister's got it. There you go. Tribal people play AD&D.
We got to head to those islands off the coast of India where that missionary went and got himself killed, speared to death, or whatever it was. Head up there.
Oh, that poor guy. Yeah.
I don't care. He had it coming.
He had
bothering anyone.
He told the government of India is like, if you make it off this island alive, we will arrest you and put you in prison. They don't want to be screwed with. They don't want your gifts. They don't want you on the island. We don't want you on the island. We don't want you to give them gifts. The gift you give them could be smallpox. Don't go to the island. He's like, I have to spread the word of Christ. And you know what? Spiritually, I can appreciate it. However, of the many great gifts that the good Lord gave us, whether you are a Christian, Jew, Muslim, whatever, you have to acknowledge God gave us common sense. And if you fail to use that, I think we can all say, the good Lord, well, you know, he lets us learn. He lets us learn. Awick says, I have to watch.
The good Lord gave us a saving throw.
Yeah, one. Awick says, we have to watch K-pop for the big boy views. No, I don't. I mean, yes, I would have to, but I'm not going to. Open Gangnam Style was fun. Here's a little bit of computer trivia, and I may have told this to Kyle, but I don't know if back a number of years ago I was trying to get my Bachelor of Science in computer science, and it's something I need to finish up. When you're my age, you know, you do things in drips and drabs like that. But I had a class that was in the fundamentals of computer programming, and I had to take it. And it's understanding the real, like, super guts of why computer processors work, the fundamental architecture, the underpinning of every 1 and 0, regardless of whether it's a Game Boy or your smart TV's embedded computer or your desktop PC or your smartphone, is understanding that. In computing, there is something called a stack overflow, where when you reach a certain value on a counter, a computer expects the next value. And if you reach the limits of the possible values that it can have, the counter will decrement. That is, if you picture pouring water into a cup and it's going up here, the water is expecting there to be more cup. And if it doesn't, it overflows and it comes back down to the bottom. I was floundering in a test, and I didn't know, the test was like 5 questions. So you miss one. Or no, God, it was less. It was like 3. So you miss 1 and, you know, you get a D. So I didn't know the answer to the 3rd one, and I knew I was hosed. But on the 2nd one was, what is Stack Overflow? When does it occur? And give an example. Now, I knew the textbook examples, but the video, Open Gangnam Style by South Korean rapper Psy, broke YouTube's view counter. YouTube's view counter is based on a 32-bit stack pointer. It assumes that in decimal values, the highest number of views that a video can get is 1 billion and change. Psy broke that. And it basically, the counter went a little bonkers. Well, YouTube monetization is based on...
It didn't clock it? Like, you know, when you had a little King Kong thing, handheld, and you put 999 and it was 0 again?
No, it didn't just display E's or all zeros or all nines. So engineers at Google rewrote the code. So the Google stack pointer is now 64-bit, which means it will take something like 17,000 years for it to overflow for his video at the rate they calculated at the time, or any other videos that go at the same rate. But like my videos that get like 101 views, you know, millions of years to overflow. And I'm not damning myself for, you know, fishing for compliments. That's just the majority of YouTube creators. So I made that comment, but it happens very visibly in the game Pac-Man. If you play Pac-Man past the 255th level, when the computer, when the program that runs on the Pac-Man arcade hardware looks over and says, we just finished level 255. What level am I running? The stack pointer goes 0, and the program's like, All right, level 0 it is, and ruins the map. You can't play any further because the screen goes all wonky. So I mentioned those two things. Missed the third question, but I got like 30 extra points. And he wrote, great computing history lesson. This is exactly what I was looking for. Plus 25, plus 25. So
that's your plus 10% XP bonus then.
That is my plus 10% XP bonus.
Helped you level up.
Dungeon Minister is talking about the island. He says, that's an island for which you brush the dust off your feet and move on. Absolutely. But yes, K-pop videos, that is the Open Gangnam Style is the only one that I would watch. Michael Connor says Beth roars. Oh yeah, that's another opera singer who reacts. And he flipped asteroids. Yeah, all the old arcade games were built around 8-bit pointers. So doing stuff like causing them to crash by getting certain scores. There's something in common parlance in arcade games and even in video games called a kill screen, where you get to a certain level and the program just like, all right, I'm done. You win. It can happen on a PC or a handheld or whatever. But in Donkey Kong, if you pass a certain score, which I think is...
What was it about? The little hand... I remember when I was in primary school, a friend had it, and the little hand had one. It just went up to 999. So if you scored above 1,000, it would then clock over back to 0. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example of both Stack Overflow and Kill Screen.
But it kept playing. It kept playing though.
Oh, okay. So it's just Stack Overflow. It's not Kill Screen. It's just Stack Overflow. But yeah, a lot of old arcade games would crash. This is pretty insidious. And this didn't really start to be a thing. There was kind of like, for some video games, sort of a golden period when arcade, like even companies that were making tons of money from arcade games were like, let's just make sure that people can have fun, as much fun as possible for a quarter. But most arcade games are meant to be played for 90 seconds. A minute 30 that's as long as they want you playing Galaga on a single quarter. That's as long as they want you playing Gorf on a single quarter, or Battlezone or whatever. And so the games are engineered to be, for a casual gamer, exactly that difficult.
Yeah,
you'll get people
in the olden days. Yeah, you play on and they'd give you extra credit, so you could
you'd get an extra life. But to get to the point where you were good enough to get 10,000 points on Galaga and get that extra ship, and then 20,000, and I think it's like 40,000 thereafter, you still had to practice. And how do you practice? Well, this game's not available at home. You just keep putting quarters in.
I think they must have made it more difficult over time, though, because there were lots of us who were regularly getting extra lives and or credits or whatever in these games, and we hadn't pumped that much money into them. But if you go to an arcade these days, it's a lot tougher. They've really, I mean, the graphics are really better, obviously, but it's a lot tougher. So they have to pump a lot more money in if they're going to do that. But I mean, the machines probably cost more proportionally anyway. So.
Well, most arcade machines these days, there's Joe's Video Game Repair on YouTube is a great channel. And some of the newer arcade games, I'm talking like from the early 2000s to, well, I say early 2000s, 2008, 2009 on, they're just PCs. It's a standard ATX PC motherboard. But what you're talking about, like our difficulty settings, there's dip switches on old arcade machines or software controls. A guy can come in from the company that the convenience store or whoever's leasing it from, throw a switch inside to put it into service mode, and then, you know, move the joystick and the fire button and say, okay, the guy that owns the dry cleaning place down the shop from little 10-year-old Kyle, or down the street from little 10-year-old Kyle, says, look, there's this little runt that comes in here, shoe on, and he throws in a 25-cent piece. He's playing the hell out of this, you know? I want him to either spend more money or get out. I got you, no problem. So, you know, he sets the speed faster, you know, more, you know, more bombs are dropped, whatever, and makes it more difficult. But, you know, you go to the ice cream parlor and it's your friend's birthday, and, you know, they've rented the place out. Well, that guy might go and set all the difficulty to low because he wants to keep everybody in there and eating ice cream. You know?
Well, there used to always be a pinball machine or game of asteroids, that sort of thing, in the fish and chip shop. Because, like, while you're waiting 10 minutes for your fish and chips to be made, you'd knock out a game or two. It was just that little extra bit of cash revenue for them, and keep people interested, rather than just sort of sitting there staring into space, waiting for their chips.
Yeah. Yup. And I'll tell you something. I did not have a whole lot of D&D outlet when I was a kid, because for the longest time I just had Keep on the Borderlands. You know, that was it. I had that and some dice. So a lot of times a good fantasy themed arcade game was how I would scratch that itch. Even just like ancillary stuff like Wizard of War. It had that electronic voice that would taunt you. That was a good one. Or you know, Rastan from I think it was it Namco, I think, did Rastan, but you know, you get lots of
the fantasy themed ones I remember is what was it called? There was one which was just basically a series of cartoon cutscenes, and but I was always horrendous at it because you had to get the exact right timing.
Dragon's Lair.
Yeah.
Dragon's Lair had a Laserdisc player down in it. Yeah.
There was that. And then there was also good old Golden Axe, which you could be the Amazon woman, scantily clad Amazon woman, or the scantily clad barbarian man. And me and my girlfriend used to play it. And I played the Amazon woman and she played the barbarian man, which possibly tells you something about our relationship. But
that's very progressive of you, Kyle. Very, very progressive of you. I liked Wizard of War. Now, one that I actually didn't like at the arcade, but I got the ROM for it. That is, you know, basically the guts of it to emulate on my desktop PC. And then I love it because I can just hit the F5 key to add quarter for more lives, is a side-scrolling D&D game called Black Tiger. That it's just like a jumping platformer thing, but it's all fantasy themed. And when you free villagers who've been imprisoned in the dungeons, right on the spot, they'll open up shops and you can buy potions for more hit points, lockpicks to open treasures, better weapons, and more armor. And that one's a load of fun because you on the PC, of course, you can do save states, which, you know, it'll basically let you save the game right there as is. So if you need to leave it and come back, you can do that. And I've had a lot of fun with Black Tiger at home for just something that is very actiony, has a little tiny fantasy RPG element in it. Not that you're playing a role or anything like that. Fantasy action element.
That's very industrious, little villages, or little refugees, just starting a little store. It reminds me of we've got this Gideon in Australia, and Do is Vietnamese heritage, and he literally came to Australia in a rusty boat as a refugee back in the 1970s or something when he was a little toddler, and he was commenting about there was a Survivor show going on. With it, you know, they get a bunch of people stick them out on a desert island somewhere and give them these ridiculous challenges and stuff, make their lives misery for 6 weeks. And he said, those people on the show, they're having a hard time because they're all white people. He said, if you get some Vietnamese people, they'd be, within 3 days, there'd be a little store out in on the beach, and he'd be selling kebabs to everyone else from a little stall. Kebabs and soft drinks. He would have, God knows where he finds them, but he would find them from somewhere, and he'd be selling them to the others. Oh, yeah, okay. I'll take two coconut shells, and then I'll give you a kebab. So those sound like very industrious little pillagers. You release them, and they immediately go boop and start a potion store.
Yes, that is what's funny is you hit again. Taito designed Black Tiger, but there's a point at which you just hit where, because again, you're putting virtual quarters into a virtual arcade machine. You can play long enough that you don't need to restart over and over back at the first level because you've run out of tokens or run out of quarters. Where you go back to the game and you've bought everything the shops have to offer. So you'll free a villager and they'll say, thank you. Welcome to my shop. It's like, there's a dragon just like 5 feet away. But they'll have all this wondrous stuff, and the game's like, you want the baddest weapon? It's only 2,400 gold. Yeah, I bought that like 45 minutes ago. I'm good. Well, how about +5 armor? I'm wearing +5 now. You need any potions? I have 9. That's all it'll let me buy. Lockpicks, same. Well, all right then. Good luck. It just goes like that. Yeah. You went choppy on us there for a minute.
Is not to buy stuff, it's to sell stuff. Play the pricing thing for these places.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
All right.
All right, there we go. We got you back now, I think.
Yeah, the purpose of the stores is not to buy stuff; it's to sell stuff to them and exchange it for coin.
Yes. But it's good fun, arcades, great waste of time, great waste of quarters. Loved going when I was a kid. I don't see them hardly anymore though. But the Australian feds are interfering with Kyle's signal. Luther Pendragon, Australia is slightly farther away from the moon, so no radio contact is always spotty. Anyhow, well, I hope you go. And by the way, this is not just for Kyle, but for the rest of you guys, if you are already not aware, right there is the link, and I will put that up on the screen. That will give you all the straight dope on the games that we have available and such. And then you can just come over to the Discord. You can come over to the Discord and let's see. And play. You can sign up for games. And you can give them all a look if you want. Kyle, I hope you can be there, my friend. We'll keep our eyes peeled for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm just logging in now.
Alrighty.
Having a look. What have we got? It's taking some time to think about it.
Michael Connor saying
First
we need
time
a
in band. Sign up with Google. Yeah, this is my first time in band.
We do have a good retro arcade here in Florida. We have a couple of them, actually. Not affiliated with them myself, but let me see. Well, the Vault out at Gods and Monsters. They have a barcade going. There is a place over in Oviedo. Yeah, Disney didn't keep up the games. They pretty much all got sold off to be hopefully repaired or used for parts to repair other arcade games. Kyle, let us know if you see something there. If you want to hop in, I am pretty much a guy of I'm not going to do like, oh no, registration's closed. Look, if you pop in Sunday afternoon and you got people that want to virtually game,
yeah,
put a sign up card up, okay?
All right. So what events have we got here? Dungeon board game demo.
And yes, I will be demoing Dungeon tomorrow afternoon.
And there's Zen and the Art of Playing Monsters. Is this calendar adjusted for local time? Do you know?
That I honestly don't know. I honestly and truly don't know if it adjusts for local time.
They got like 19th of May, 1600 and 1930 GMT -4. Okay, let's have to figure it out. Anyway, so we got that. Oh, +1 board game demo. Attack of Killer Hibiscus. Okay. And then Zen and the Art of Playing Monsters, The Lost Crypt, Gamma World First Edition, The Dwelling, Call of Cthulhu 4E. Yep. Oh, Sunday's looking busy. Volturna, Star Frontiers, Alpha, Original Dungeons and Dragons, Space Hulk, Polybius, The Island, Call of Cthulhu, The Wizard's Tower, Tomb of Weeping Angels. And panel classic gaming with modern something, Hero Quest, the best game in the world, tabletop wargaming demo, Grimdark. Okay.
And also, I just want to add this. I haven't nailed down an exact time because anybody that has looked at my grid, you know how busy I am. Late Friday night, I might do a panel with Tracy Lesh, but Tracy will be at the con in some capacity. So it may be late Friday night that I'm doing a panel with him. So just FYI to everyone else out there.
Okay. Do they have a bit where you can adjust your local time? You would think so. For a thing which has for like international, there should be a bit where you can, or does it just fit your local time itself? Maybe it does. I hope it does.
Tonka Todd asks, is there a way a person could listen into or watch a game being played? I'm okay if you pop in as long as, you know, just mute your mic. If you're not playing, but absolutely, I don't mind.
I assumed all the games were going to be streamed.
Not live stream. I'm not like putting them over StreamYard or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of people running parallel games. It would be difficult for me to do that. But I mean, as far as you watching, I would reach out to individual DMs and say, "Hey, can I give this a try?" You can definitely you can definitely watch on your own, but to the wide world at large, I don't really have a plan to live stream anything. But as for myself, I'm running some OD&D, AD&D, Twilight 2000, some Tales from the Loop, and a couple of board game demos is what I have going on.
Cool. The game
must go on. By all means, the game must go on. By all means, I hope to see, because like I said back a couple hours ago, you are part of this circus too. So whether that means you're a ringmaster or a clown, I'll leave up to you to decide, Cal.
Luther says time zones is at least of Kyle's problem. He lives where he's upside down all the time. You know what would be cool? If on the stream you could flip my image so I'm upside down all the time. And then especially anyone who's watching on their phone would be going, hang on, no, wait, hang on. I think just to mess with Luther's head. I
think you would have to do something to your camera. I can't really, I don't know if I have that.
Does the camera adjust if I... No, it doesn't. I could just put the camera upside down all the time. Hello, Luther. Oh, all the blood's rushing to my head now. Yeah, that could work. There we go. Maybe I'll put the camera upside down next time.
All right. So, yeah, folks, please, if you want to play, just check out Band. Go there, sign up, and then follow the Discord link that I've put up, and that will bring you over to the Discord where you can play. No special requirements except a good internet connection, which is a virtual con. You're going to want to have had that anyway. And a desire to play games. Now, I have set up event rooms on the Discord. If you go and you look under voice channels, there's event rooms listed there. I don't really have them gridded out yet. Remember what I was saying about if this goes really well, it's because some people have stepped up, and if it fails miserably, it's because of me. I don't have the rooms gridded out yet. So you guys get your Rotten Tomatoes ready. But yeah, you'll go to an event room, and that's where you'll be large and in charge and running your games. So, and if we need more, all I got to do is right click and select create channel and add another one. That's the beauty of that. So, hope to see you there, Kyle, at some game or the other. Hope to see all, you're over here. All you folks out there in internet land, hope to see you there. If you're new to the channel, again, please check it out. It's my little way of giving back to the people who have done something wonderful from my perspective, for me, by helping me get to 1,000 viewers, which just bumps me up a little bit. So YouTube takes me seriously. And then I get to spread the good word about classic role-playing games and whatever other nonsense we decide to talk about to other folks too. So this is my thank you, and I appreciate it. Now, next week, we'll be back to form. This will be in the rearview mirror, and we can talk about what a fiasco it was or what an awesome thing it was. But Monday, we're going to start doing a deep dive on Slave Pitch. You ever play the Slavers modules, Kyle? A1, A2, A3, A4?
I have, yes.
Excellent. We're going to be doing it
many years ago, and the game master used Rollmaster for them.
Oh God! So technically, you're still playing them.
We didn't play all the way through.
There you go.
It was a very rough draft sketch kind of thing to get him through.
Somebody, we were kind of talking about the terrible state of D&D, and I was saying, yeah, but no, WotC, I will keep playing D&D, classic D&D, because classic adventures. And somebody on Facebook said, well, just play your classic adventures, just use GURPS. And my response was, ew. Thank you, Lord Corion. Thank you very much. A mug of ale for the guac. Well, we appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lord Corion. Yeah, no, next week we're going to do a deep dive, and it'll be a while, into the A modules, because we did G, D, and Q. We saw how how magnificently and wonderfully lethal those modules were. And we're going to talk about the A series. Then we're going to, I don't know, after the A series. I've had some requests for S3. I've had some requests for B4. But deep dives are coming. You guys seem to enjoy those. Tuesday, little bit of deep dive, and then a whole lot of AD&D Let's Play. Wednesday, Kyle will be back, and we'll entertain you guys again. And then Thursday, more deep dive. Friday, deep dive and Gamma World. Hopefully everybody will be here for Gamma World, and so on into the sunset. Thank you to everyone for being here tonight. Thank you, Lord Corion, for the mug of ale. Luther Pendragon says, I don't know what the rest of Australia says about you. I think you're pretty cool. Whatever the rest of Australia has to say about Kyle that's negative, they need to say from at least a little more than 1,500 yards for reasons. But I do want to take a minute to...
I can't throw either a burger or a burrito that far. That was one of my son's many helpful questions or interesting questions he asked. Which do you think is more aerodynamic, Papa, a burger or a burrito? I said he would have to experiment and find out. But I don't think we could do a burger or burrito from 1,500 yards. I don't think they'd go that far, but we'd have to experiment.
Exactly. So they would be safe. So let me thank Joshua Garlock, Lord Corion, especially Lord Corion. Thank you for that super. Ricky Maru, 1, Mobius, Kevin Reynolds, Doom Sword Deathmaster, Mark Simpson, Damien 247, James F. Keck, William Smith, the Dungeon Minister, Manny Wall, Mark Corey, Kevin Wood, Todd Sharp, Carnivore Farmer, Cannot Say That, Will Get Bandulous, Jeremy Rule, Boganora, Mikey Mank, and Sky Hernstrom. Thank you all so very, 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 very much. Speaking of the Dungeon Minister, we have merch for the con. We have con merch. I don't think it will get to you. I don't think it will get to you if you order now, but you can still get con merch. I ordered a pint glass myself. Right there in the chat, you can see the link. I'm going to put that up. Dungeon Minister, blah, 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 Mindspring, Teespring. Oh, I just showed my age there saying Mindspring, but go get yourself some Guac Con merch. Thanks to my co-host Kyle, and thanks to you guys. It'll get to you, just not before the con. And one final caveat, I don't control it. Dungeon Minister doesn't control it. Teespring controls it. So just letting you know. You guys have a fabulous evening. Kyle, you have a fabulous evening. And I will see you all tomorrow for my first session at 4 p.m. Eastern. Peace to you, my friends.